What if I told you that all of those offices that you've never heard of on your ballot are actually tasked with some of the most important jobs in any state or any county in Pennsylvania or across the country? In this state, the state treasurer and the state auditor general are in charge of Pennsylvania's finances. So what are their jobs? Who are they? How do they do their jobs? And why should you as a voter care? Gordon Denlinger serves as the state's Deputy Auditor General, and he joins us today to talk about those questions and more. That's all coming up right here, right now. I'm Sam Chen, and this is Face the Issues. Good evening and welcome to Face the Issues. I'm Sam Chen. Every election, we know that there is a number of offices that we look at and we think, that's an office? Someone's running? Why did I see any ads for her? Why did I look them up earlier? In Pennsylvania, some of these offices are statewide, including the offices of State Treasurer and the Auditor General. So who are those who hold the offices? What do they do? And why is this so important? Gordon Denlinger, who is the state's Deputy Auditor General, joins us today to talk about all of that. Gordon, welcome back to Face the Issues. It's so good to have you back in studio. And
great to be back, Sam. Good to see you. It's been too long since we've done a show, but
it really has been too long. And for our viewers who don't know, I just want to run through your resume real quick. I mean, you served in the State House of Representatives for 12 years. And you were very much involved in the fiscal ins and outs, fiscal policy, businesses, things like that for those 12 years. I mean, that was a lot of the committees that you worked on.
The Finance Committee in the House, Appropriations Committee, as they say, the important Appropriations Committee, controls the purse strings. And yes, most of my time in the House, I served in that capacity doing the state budgets year after year. So key roles, yes.
And then you went on, you became the state director for the NFIB, also doing a lot of work in that business, fiscal, financial areas, and now Deputy Auditor General of the state of Pennsylvania.
Here we are, and thrilled to be serving under Tim DeFore, who is the 52nd Auditor General of our state, a man of great honor and dignity. And a historic win for General DeFore as the first statewide elected African-American in office in Pennsylvania.
And also, I mean, we'll talk about the difference between these offices, but the Auditor General and the State Treasurer both deal in fiscal matters. Respectively, Tim DeFore and Stacey Garrity, the first Republicans, or one of only a handful of Republicans in the last 60 years to have won those statewide seats.
I think you have to go back to 1956 to have Republicans in both of those respective seats, but both working very hard to get the job done, you bet.
Let's talk about those offices and those roles. In Pennsylvania, obviously when the president runs across the country, every state knows that's the top of the ticket. In the year like this one with the election, by the time this airs that we've just passed, the governor's race, a Senate race. These are the statewide seats that everybody pays attention to, knows about. In Pennsylvania, on presidential years, there are 3 row offices that come up. I think most voters are familiar with the Attorney General, and there is a sense in which the Attorney General often then runs for governor. We see this with Josh Shapiro, we saw this with Tom Corbett, but then there's the Auditor General and the Treasurer. Can you first off tell us, what do each of these do?
Sure, happy to. The Treasurer, of course, is the keeper of the checkbook, if you will. Money in, money out is way oversimplifying it, but frankly, the Treasurer is truly a fiscal watchdog, making sure that all is handled properly with the flow of funds. The Treasurer gets into some special projects. We know there's the college savings program, the 521 plans, and so forth. So different aspects under the Treasurer are very key to the function of the finances of the state, and certainly our bond ratings and all of that enter into that picture. The Auditor General, you say the word auditing and people are like, oh no, stay away from me. But what we do is we audit anywhere that a state dollar goes, we have authority to audit. So you think about So what are those state agencies where we might travel? Well, the state stores across the state, so the 600 of those roughly.
People forget that in this state, you have to buy your liquor from the government.
It is a government monopoly system, still is largely, and we audit all of those stores. County governments, liquid fuels dollars, county row offices, district courts, magisterial district courts, and so forth. Those would be some more. So there's a range of different functions that are tied to state dollars that we then come in and audit on a cycle, 1, 2, 3, sometimes 4 if it gets a little more extended years. And so we're the ones who are keeping an eye, looking over the shoulder, if you will, to make sure people are doing what they ought to be doing. And I think there's just a powerful impact of knowing that somebody is going to show up, going to look through my books, going to make sure that the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, we've done this the right way. So that's kind of our function, is to sort of not only be reviewing, but making people know that we will be showing up. I think that has a deterrent effect as well.
And there's so much to this also. I mean, the government controls purse strings, and so you would imagine they should also have oversight, and that's what we're seeing. Would it be safe to say that the Treasurer and the Auditor General both have some degree of oversight?
Absolutely, that's a fair statement. We're more connected with the agencies themselves. Okay. The state Treasury would be more, as we all pay our taxes, the mass lump of money would move into the Treasury and then be distributed out based on the budget, the guidelines in the budget each year. We're more tied to specific agencies and their functions. Understood. And so we come in, and as an audit occurs, we review. We hope that they're clean. Sure. Sometimes they're not. Once in a while we run into issues. I think one of the more interesting ones that I've gotten plugged into in my role is the fire and fire relief agencies tied to all the fire departments across the state. We do put funding into the VFRAs, or volunteer fire relief agencies, and that's about 1,700 of those across the state. So we're in there very frequently, and those are volunteer organizations. But we do fund them. The pension systems all across the state. So as you know, pensions based on their level of funding can be well funded, or in the case of Chester City particularly, right on the brink of insolvency. Wow. So it runs the gamut. We're very connected into the pension systems as well. So
let me ask you this, and I do want to get into in this next segment where you think the current fiscal state of the state is, but let me ask you this about the job. If, let's say, you run to something that you said sometimes the books are clean, we certainly hope the books are clean. That means, it's good for the taxpayers if the books are clean. That means the government is utilizing the funding the way they were supposed to. But in those situations when it's not, does the Auditor General's office take action, or does this get turned over to the Attorney General's office? What happens if there is an issue?
We absolutely do take action, and we would have findings in our audit relative to things that we found that were problematic. Okay. The hoped for is a clean report, no findings. But they can run, the gamut on issues that local volunteer fire relief agency is not managing properly. And the tragic cases are where, a volunteer will get their hand into the cookie jar, and that's the checkbook. Usually the treasurer of a VFRA is the person who lost, the draw of straws. Like, oh, you get the checkbook, you get to do that. Like, okay, well. And most of them do the best they can with it. Once in a while, somebody will say, well, here I am, I have a problem in life, or I want to take a big nice vacation, and they'll start dipping their hand into it. In those cases, which again are few and far between, we do first, of course, explore fully what's going on to get our documentation solidly presented, and then we would reach out to a county district attorney, and that would be the prosecutorial route, or in the worst cases to the state attorney general, and we do turn over work to the attorney general's office as well. Has that happened before, where Attorney General Shapiro's office had to step in? Absolutely. There is always a few cases where they're connected, and then more at the county levels, obviously, and those would be the smaller cases that you would run into. And and sometimes we talk to people, and say, look, we have a few hundred or a few thousand missing here. Do you want to talk to us about that? Do you want to set up a payment plan to put it back in place? I mean, how do we want to handle this? So we can take steps to try to mitigate before we get to sort of the ultimate penalties, if you will.
What I love about that is that this is epitomizing the checks and balance system, where you have the Treasury has a job, the Auditor General has a job, the Attorney General and the District Attorneys have a job, and everybody needs to work. And the money is allocated by the legislature, so everybody has a piece of this, and everybody needs to do their best, like a relay race, where everybody has to run their best race in order for the system to work. Let me ask you about, you said earlier, sometimes you can resolve it, your office can resolve it, sometimes it must be turned over for prosecution. Are there times, I mean, you mentioned there's cases where this is intentional. Somebody is dipping in, somebody is embezzling, stealing, whatever it might be. Are there times where it's a bookkeeping error and somebody's just, I don't want to say incompetent, but maybe it was just a mistake or they mistyped something into the calculator? I mean, have there been situations where it's just been bookkeeping?
Actually, that would be more the case.
Okay.
Usually it's errors and inaccuracies that we run into. And there it is a sit down and explain, here's how it works, and walk them back through. Or, go find somebody else to be the volunteer treasurer. Sometimes it's better just to hand it off. But in a lot of cases, it's just accidental. We're going to assume the best until facts prove us otherwise. But we can usually help people clean it up and get back on track, so to speak.
Last question before we cut the break. As we said at the very start, people don't often think about state treasurer, auditor general. These are not races that people get overly excited about, especially in Pennsylvania, where we elect them the year we elect the president. What would you say to voters about why these offices and these roles are so important and why they should pay more attention to who's running for these offices?
Well, historically, these offices have been perceived as launching pads to bigger political careers. And I could throw out a list of names of folks who have run for other things beyond. I think the importance of it is, does the person want to do this job? Do they have some, credentials to give them, that they should be doing the job? They have some education and life experience that lend it well, lend well to that. So, because they are important, is it about politics or is it about doing this job the right way and having the background to handle it properly? I'm blessed to work with a man who has that background and he wants to be a good Auditor General. But I think it's a big question as we look at the elective process. Why does this person seek this job?
Sure.
Is it in their background, or are they just trying to get to the next step?
Yeah. A great question that we should often ask, and probably ask more often than we do. And so, Gordon, I appreciate that insight. We're going to cut the break. When we come back, I do want to talk about where you see the state fiscally right now, and so we can have that conversation. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Face the Issues is produced and recorded in the studios of Lighthouse TV. Positively different.
Welcome back to Face the Issues. Gordon, thank you again for joining us, for giving insight into what I think is often an overlooked office, but one that's incredibly important. I do want to focus in this segment on this fiscal state of the state, if you will, and where we stand. I think oftentimes, you look at right now in inflation, the number one issue of the 2022 election is inflation. Everybody wants to talk economics and fiscal policy when things are bad. We forget about it when things are good, and we see that other issues suddenly rise to the top when everybody's happy fiscally. Where does the state stand now fiscally, in your mind? Where does the state stand now?
Pennsylvania has significant demographic challenges in play. We're an aging state, formerly you would call us a Rust Belt state, that I think become the challenge for our policymakers, new governor, General Assembly going forward. And that is connected to, are we retaining talent? Are we generating new business growth? Do we have startups of businesses and so forth that are going to help pay the freight, if you will, as we get on down the road? I'm an optimist by nature, and I do think our policymakers will figure it out as they go. But that aging aspect is deeply concerning, and we have an amazing college and university system in the state. But as we know, too often people get that degree and then they hit the highway and head for another state. We need to make Pennsylvania the place they want to stay in, other people want to come to, and whatever policies from a tax standpoint we need to do to attract young people need to be put in place. Absolutely.
Yeah, and the conversation a lot of states have. I remember I had a client in New Jersey years ago, and I said, what is the number one issue that New Jersey faces as far as jobs goes? And he looks at me and says, Governor Corbett. And he said, the Pennsylvania had all these policies that were bring jobs across the border from New Jersey. I know KPMG had done a review of Pennsylvania. Can you talk about that and what their findings were and where they see the state? I know where we are now, but also what does the future look like?
Yeah, and appreciate you mentioning that. We, as General DeFore came in, one of the things he has wanted to do in our department, our executive branch agency, is to modernize with technology to bring in the next generation of auditors and talent. We are an aging department. And so we contracted with KPMG to have them come in and do a review completely of the Auditor General's function. That's people, procedures, kind of everything. And so we're just at the point now of having received that report. It's going to take us to where the private sector, frankly, has gone in the auditing sphere, and that's to more risk-based selection of who we audit, as opposed to just saying we do them all. If you get clean audits year after year after year, maybe we do a more limited engagement with you and focus on the problem cases, and we channel the resources that way. So that's been a part of the KPMG analysis of our agency. And then moving technology forward with next-gen electronic work papers. We have a lot of in-house written work papers. It's time to move in the future. I mean, I'm talking over the next years to the next generation to modernize this department, get more efficiencies, and do more with less, quite frankly. The state as a whole, you're right, KPMG also has been engaged very much with a look at Pennsylvania. I think they would second the thought on the demographic challenges. Pennsylvania's flat tax system, quite frankly, is one of our strengths, and there's efforts to try to put graduated income tax in place.
Which would take a constitutional amendment, is that correct?
It would, because we have a uniformity clause in the Constitution. We cannot go there. But frankly, that for the future is one of the real strengths of Pennsylvania. Beyond that, the recent moves by our policymakers on the corporate net income tax rate, the CNI rate, which is a bipartisan effort. Governor Wolf, of course, did the first effort of that, and we understand policymakers are going to be looking to maybe even expedite reductions in the CNI rate. That's where you hold the open for business sign out in front of businesses all across America. Come to Pennsylvania, we are competitive. That's what that says.
And the corporate tax rate in Pennsylvania, I mean, politicians for ages have said this is one of the drawbacks of keeping businesses in the state. And so it's good to see that there's a bipartisan effort to work toward that.
Second highest in the nation as it was, is kind of a closed for business signal. And so I think the bipartisan effort to address that was huge, very important.
One of the other things I know that your department works on and throughout the state is the fiscal concern. You talked about your department being an aging department. I don't know what you're talking about. You look very young. But the state is an aging state. We were one of the original 13. This is a historic state. And with that, infrastructure ages, roads age. It's not just an aging population. Everything about the state ages. We had a show not long ago where we talked about that there's a fiscal cliff coming in the infrastructure and transportation aspects. Part of that, a large piece of that, is the Pennsylvania Turnpike. And I know you've done an audit on the Turnpike and looking, which ties directly into this infrastructure question. This affects everybody in the state, Republican, Democrat, old, young. If you travel on our state roads, this is going to affect you. What were the findings of this?
Sure. Yes, we did just release an audit of the Turnpike Commission. And they cooperated 100%. It was really great to work with their folks. There was, if folks who remember a little longer term, the effort to put tolling on Route 80, and that was under Governor Rendell. So the legislation was passed to put that in place, and the federal government said, nope, not going to allow that. So that was the revenue stream that was going to help to fund what was an annual $450 million draw out of the Turnpike side to move over that money over to PennDOT to fund the rest of our roads and other things, quite frankly. We did an audit, and of course, one of the big objectives of it was sustainability. Quite frankly, the Turnpike at $13.2 billion has more debt than all of the rest of Pennsylvania state government.
Wow.
It's a staggering mountain of debt that's going to take decades to unwind.
Wow.
It's a result of that legislation that goes back in the federal government's denial of tolling of Route 80. That said, that was a big concern as our auditors took a look at this topic. Is the Turnpike headed for a collapse? They're riding the razor's edge. They're hiking tolls every year. We know we all hate that, but they're just trying to keep things solvent year over year, and they have managed to do that to their credit. They also took the opportunity of amazingly low interest rates in the late teen years to recast a lot of their debt at lower interest rates. So they've managed it well to the best of their ability, but we need policymakers on the Hill and new governor to step up to the plate and look at the Turnpike and say, how do we fix this? The issue of the gray hair that you mentioned, that I have more of than I like. But that said, we in Pennsylvania, and folks need to realize we have one of the most advantageous personal tax structures for retirees in the nation. It makes Pennsylvania number 2 in terms of retirement destinations after Florida. And it isn't about the weather. It's not about the weather. It's about the taxes. And we have very friendly tax policies for senior citizens. So you see those retirement communities that have sprung up all over the state. There's a reason for that. We do not tax retirement income, typically, pensions and so forth. So it's a good place to come. That does push our demographics to the aging side of the equation. But beyond that, you're right. I mean, there's a lot of legacy costs in this state. Roads and bridges, huge topics for us going forward, and that becomes the challenge for folks in the executive and legislative branch.
Looking forward, there's a lot of conversation about how inflation and the economy affects things. Your team, the Philadelphia Phillies, their minor league team is in our backyard here, literally in our backyard here, the Iron Pigs.
You're breaking my heart, Sam. My poor Phillies. Yes, you're right.
All major league teams were asked their AAA teams to upgrade stadiums. The famous situation here, the Iron Pigs had the funds for it, and then inflation hit. This is true with transportation, with infrastructure. This is true across the board. How do you see in the next several years the state doing financially?
Well, a lot of that depends on, can we get back in the business of economic generation at the starting, the front end of the process. Entrepreneurship, having people say, you know what, my dream has been to open that restaurant or that shop or store or hardware or manufacturing, whatever that vision is, and say, I'm willing to scrape together the capital. There's basic 101 capitalism, scrape together the capital to take the risk to try to get to the reward at the end of the effort. We need a regulatory and tax environment that welcomes that, that causes more people to say, yep, want to give it a shot. And so that's what we need to happen.
Okay, that's great advice. Thank you. Don't go away. We'll be back to close out. So don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Face the Issues. Gordon, thank you again for joining us. You are no stranger to Harrisburg. You've been there as a representative. You're now there. You've been there with on the private side with NFIB. Now you're there in the executive branch. Has Harrisburg shifted all these years? And there's always this talk about how everything's getting more partisan. People are hating each other more. You've been there, the last 2 decades. What has your take on it been?
Yes, there would be a sense that, are the extremes on both sides, more dominant. There's an argument to be made that, yes, the noise is at higher decibels. There's more shouting. But as I work around the Capitol, our offices are in the finance building right next door to the Capitol. There's an amazing amount of goodwill that goes on. And you see folks at a personal level, Republicans and Democrats, get to know each other, enjoy working together, try to find places to work together to move policies forward. And I will tell you, Sam, you mentioned, I had my legislative journey and now I'm in the executive branch. And in both places I have found amazingly good people. You hear this, all those government people, and those people over there. But they're great folks who go to work every day, often not compensated as well, quite frankly, as the private sector, and they go there to do the people's work, to try to, squeeze the nickels and do the right thing. And I sometimes think they deserve a shout out once in a while too, because they give their lives, often career long, in some of these capacities and try to do the right thing. I think they deserve more thanks along the way at points.
That's a great insight. I often see the same thing in Washington. I know the crazier rhetoric gets the headlines and gets the attention, but there really are good people who just come to work day in and day out, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, across the board, working together. And it's just not something I think our communities often see.
Well, it doesn't grab the noise, so to speak. But in a sense, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe we need people to keep the wheels of government rolling and do a quality job, and so many of them do. Yeah.
Quick reaction question, have you recovered yet from the World Series?
Oh, I'm still in a world of pain, but the Phillies exist to break your heart, and they broke mine once again, but hey, wait till next season. Hope springs eternal. We will be back.
And what an outstanding season. Nobody saw coming from Philadelphia.
Absolutely.
So
they really, should they have even been there?
Right.
It was an amazing story, but congrats to Houston Astros fans out there too. They have an amazing team and deserve a lot of credit.
All right, Gordon, thank you again for joining us, and it's so good to have you back.
Thank you, Sam. Good to be here.
My thanks to Gordon Denlinger for joining us, and of course, thanks to each of you for tuning in. We hope you'll join us again right back here next week. My name is Sam Chen. On behalf of all of us here at Face the Issues, thank you and good night.